Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and tell us what city or country you're watching from. Tonight, a woman everyone feared will choose the wrong maid to humiliate, and one public accusation will expose more than a missing jewel. 4 months, no employee at Vale House had spoken back to Celeste Rowan. She never shouted when guests were present. She did something worse. She smiled, waited until the doors closed, then used a silver bell to summon whoever had displeased her. 1 ring meant a warning. 2 rings meant lost wages. 3 rings meant the employee disappeared before sunrise. Adrian Vale, the billionaire owner of 27 luxury hotels, believed the mansion ran smoothly because Celeste was organized. He spent most weeks traveling abroad, while his fiancée controlled the household, the guest lists, and everyone near him. The staff throughout the mansion knew the truth. Celeste ruled through fear. Nia Brooks learned that on her first morning. The black maid had barely tied her white apron when she heard a crash inside the breakfast salon. An older server named Mrs. Alvarez stood frozen beside a broken porcelain cup. Celeste looked at the pieces, then at the woman's trembling hands. That cup belonged to Adrian's grandmother. "I'm sorry, Miss Rowan. My wrist slipped. You will repay it." Mrs. Alvarez went pale. "It costs more than I earn in 3 months. Then you should have been more careful." Nia crouched and examined the fragments. A hairline crack ran through several pieces, stained dark with old tea. "This cup was already damaged," she said. Every employee stopped moving. Celeste turned slowly. "Who asked you?" "No one. But the crack was old. It broke when hot water reached it." Mrs. Alvarez stared at Nia in gratitude and terror. Celeste approached until only inches separated them. "You are new, so I will explain something once. Staff members do not correct me. I wasn't correcting you. I was correcting the story." A few workers lowered their faces to hide their reactions. Celeste's smile sharpened. "What did the agency tell you about discretion?" "That it protects privacy, not dishonesty." The silver bell rang once. Nia looked at it. Celeste said, "Consider that your warning." Nia stood. "Consider this mine. Don't punish her for a cup that was already broken." For the rest of the day, whispers followed Nia through the halls. Some called her brave. Others called her finished. Mr. Hale, the head butler, found her polishing the gallery rails. "You cannot win against Miss Rowan," he said quietly. "She keeps records on everyone." "What kind of records?" "Debts. Family problems. Immigration details. Anything she can turn into obedience." "Why doesn't anyone tell Mr. Vale?" "Because every complaint reaches her before it reaches him." Later that evening, Vale House hosted a charity dinner for 200 guests. Politicians, investors, surgeons, and celebrities filled the glass ballroom while Adrian announced a $40 million housing fund for hotel workers. Nia watched from the service entrance. The speech sounded generous. The frightened staff serving champagne told a different story. Celeste wore a silver gown and a sapphire brooch shaped like a bird. Before dinner, she walked through the kitchen criticizing uniforms, posture, and accents. When she reached Nia, she smiled. "You're still here. The shift isn't over. It will be soon." Nia noticed Celeste's right hand close around the brooch. Moments later, Celeste stepped behind the dessert station, where the staff aprons hung during meal service. Nia said nothing. She had spent 4 years working in loss prevention for one of Adrian's hotels before a restructuring eliminated her department. She knew the Vale security system better than Celeste realized. Every insured jewel worn at a Vale event carried a tiny RFID tag. Every tag appeared on the security tablet assigned to the ballroom supervisor. 10 minutes later, Celeste screamed. "My brooch is gone." Music stopped. Guests turned. Celeste touched the empty place on her gown and pointed at Nia. "She was standing beside me." Nia remained completely calm. So were 12 other people. "I saw her looking at it." Celeste ordered security to search her. Adrian crossed the ballroom, confused. "What happened?" "Your new maid stole the sapphire bird your mother gave me." Adrian looked at Nia. "Did you take it?" "No. Celeste grabbed Nia's apron pocket. Then you won't mind proving it. She reached inside and pulled out a velvet jewelry pouch. Gasps moved through the room. Celeste smiled triumphantly and opened it. The pouch was empty. Her smile vanished. Nia turned to the ballroom supervisor. Please check the RFID location for item V417. The supervisor hesitated until Adrian nodded. He opened the tablet. The brooch is still transmitting. Where? Adrian asked. The supervisor looked toward Celeste. Inside Miss Rowan's evening bag. Silence fell. Celeste clutched her silver purse. That's impossible. Nia took one step forward. You placed an empty pouch in my apron, but you forgot the jewel could be tracked. Adrian removed the purse from Celeste's hand and opened it. The sapphire brooch lay inside. So did Mrs. Alvarez's passport, 3 employee keycards, and a stack of unsigned resignation forms. The guests stared. The staff stared. And for the first time, Celeste Rowan looked afraid. Adrian lifted the passport. Why do you have this? Celeste's eyes moved toward Nia with pure hatred. Nia answered for her. Because stealing jewelry was never her real system. Stealing people's choices was. Adrian held Mrs. Alvarez's passport beneath the ballroom lights. The document should have been locked inside her apartment, not hidden in his fiancée's purse beside resignation forms and stolen keycards. Celeste, he said, answer me. Her shock lasted only a second. Then she faced the guests. This is obviously a setup. The maid planted everything to humiliate me. Mrs. Alvarez stepped forward. My passport disappeared 6 weeks ago. Celeste stared at her. You told me you misplaced it. You told me immigration officers had taken it. A murmur moved through the ballroom. Adrian's expression hardened. You told an employee federal officers seized her passport? I was preventing panic. You were creating it, Nia said. Security Director Marcus Dean opened the resignation forms. Each carried an employee's printed name but no signature. Mr. Hale, the butler, finally spoke. They were threats. Miss Rowan made us sign blank conduct reports. Later, she showed me one accusing me of stealing wine. She said she would send it to every agency unless I obeyed. Other employees found courage. The florist had been threatened with a false drug allegation. A driver had been told his son's insurance would vanish if he refused unpaid shifts. 2 housemaids had surrendered passports after Celeste promised to arrange work papers. Celeste remained composed. Disgruntled employees are coordinating because I demanded standards. Nia looked toward the ballroom supervisor. Check the keycard history. The 3 cards found in Celeste's purse belonged to workers who had resigned. One had opened Adrian's executive office at 2:18 a.m. the previous Thursday. I was in Singapore, Adrian said. So was I, Celeste replied. Were you? Nia asked. She explained that Vale Security stored door activity and elevator weight separately. A stolen card could lie about a name, but the elevator still recorded the passenger's access code. The screen showed one passenger traveling from the residential floor to the executive level. 4 minutes later, the stolen card opened Adrian's office. The passenger had entered Celeste's personal code. What were you doing there? Adrian asked. Collecting wedding documents. With a former employee's card? She said nothing. Marcus searched her purse again and found a brass key stitched into the lining. Mr. Hale recognized it. That opens the old bookkeeping room behind the wine cellar. Adrian ordered it opened. The charity dinner ended, though many guests remained, pretending concern while refusing to miss the scandal. Adrian, Nia, Celeste, Marcus, and 3 staff representatives descended to the cellar. The narrow door opened with the brass key. Inside, metal shelves held labeled binders for every employee. Mrs. Alvarez's file contained her passport copy, daughter's address, bank balance, and photographs of her entering a legal clinic. Mr. Hale's binder contained his brother's gambling debt. The driver's file included his son's hospital schedule. Celeste had not merely collected weaknesses. She had organized them. Adrian found a black ledger on the desk. Every employee's name appeared beside a number. What are these amounts? Nia studied the columns. They're transfers from the Employee Housing Fund. That evening, Adrian had publicly announced $40 million for worker housing. According to the ledger, nearly $6 million had already been diverted. The payments went to Rowan Residential Services. Adrian looked at Celeste. A family company, she said. It manages housing. Marcus searched the corporation database. It was created 8 months ago. The registered owner is Celeste's father. Property photographs were clipped inside the ledger. They showed condemned motels with exposed wiring, broken heating systems, and overcrowded rooms. Celeste had charged the fund premium rates while placing workers in unsafe housing. Adrian closed the ledger. You stole from the people this program was meant to protect. I improved your margins. You robbed my staff. I found leverage. No, Nia said. You found frightened people. Celeste smiled coldly. And what did you find, Nia? She pulled a red file from the shelf. Nia Brooks was printed across it. 4 years ago, she was fired from the Vale Brighton Hotel for unauthorized access to financial records. Adrian looked at Nia. You worked for me. In loss prevention. Celeste continued. The report says she copied confidential files and tried to blackmail a regional director. Your heroic maid entered this house using an incomplete history. Adrian read the signature. Martin Gage, one of his trusted executives. Why were you accessing the records? He asked. Because 4 to 7 hotel employees were losing small amounts from every paycheck. I traced the money to a vendor account. Before I could present the evidence, Martin accused me of extortion and removed my access. Celeste laughed. Convenient. Nia removed a folded transaction receipt from her sleeve. I kept one original. Adrian examined it. The vendor receiving the stolen wages was Rowan Residential Services. Celeste's confidence cracked. You stole that document. I preserved it. You came here for revenge. I came because Mrs. Alvarez contacted me after recognizing the vendor name on her housing statement. Mrs. Alvarez nodded. Nia had not arrived by accident. Frightened employees had asked for someone who understood the system stealing from them. Adrian looked at Celeste like a stranger. How long has this been happening? Before she answered, every cellar light went out. The lock snapped behind them. Smoke began pouring through the ventilation grate. Marcus pulled at the door. It's sealed from outside. Red emergency lights flashed. Celeste stared at the smoke with genuine terror. I didn't do this. Nia heard machinery starting beneath the floor. Someone else had access to the hidden room. And whoever controlled Celeste's files had decided no one inside could leave with them. Nia dropped to the floor and pressed her hand against the tiles. The machinery was not a ventilation fan. It was a document incinerator below the shelves. Heat spread beneath the binders as paper edges began curling. Whoever triggered the system wanted the evidence destroyed before rescue arrived. Adrian tore off his jacket and covered Mrs. Alvarez's mouth. Nia searched the wall, knowing their only escape might be concealed inside Celeste's operation. Heat rolled beneath the shelves as the first binder burst into flame. Everyone stay low, Nia ordered. Smoke thickened across the ceiling. Marcus threw his shoulder against the steel door, but the magnetic lock held. Adrian used his jacket to smother a burning stack while Mrs. Alvarez coughed beside the desk. There is another exit, Nia said. Celeste shook her head. There isn't. You built a secret records room beneath a billionaire's mansion. You would never leave yourself only one door. Celeste's eyes moved toward the wine racks. Nia crossed the room, removed 3 bottles, and found a narrow brass handle. She twisted it. Nothing happened. Code. Celeste remained silent. Adrian seized her shoulders. People are going to die. My father designed the room, Celeste said. The release requires 2 keys. We have one, Marcus said, holding the brass key from her purse. The second stays with Martin Gage. The executive who had framed Nia 4 years earlier had helped build the system beneath Vale House. Where is he? Adrian demanded. Celeste looked toward the ceiling speaker. He is probably listening. Martin's voice entered the room. You always were observant, Miss Brooks. Adrian stared at the speaker. Open the door. I cannot do that. You work for me. I have worked around you, Adrian. There is a difference. Nia stepped closer to the wall panel. You used Celeste as the visible threat while you moved money through her family company. She enjoyed the power. I enjoyed the efficiency. Celeste looked horrified. You told me the transfers were protected. They were, until you brought your files into my disposal room. You said this room belonged to me. Nothing in Vale House belongs to you. The machinery beneath the floor roared louder. Nia examined the wine rack. The brass handle was wired to a mechanical release. If two keys turned together, the second lock had to be nearby. She dropped to her knees and felt beneath the lowest shelf. Her fingers touched a keyhole hidden under the stone ledge. Marcus, give me Celeste's key. It doesn't fit. Because this is Martin's side. Adrian looked at the shelves. Then we find his key. Nia studied the room. Martin would never carry the only escape key if he entered alone. He would hide a duplicate where no employee would touch it. Her eyes settled on the black ledger. She tore open its spine. A flat steel key fell onto the desk. Celeste stared. I never knew that was there. Because he never trusted you. Marcus inserted the key into the hidden lock. Nia placed the brass key into the handle. Turn on 3. They turned together. The wine rack released, revealing a narrow maintenance corridor. Nia sent Mrs. Alvarez first, followed by Celeste and Adrian. Marcus entered last as burning shelves collapsed behind them. The passage led into the mansion's laundry wing. Sprinklers activated seconds later, but the evidence room was already being consumed. Martin had destroyed most of the files. He had not destroyed the people who had read them. Adrian ordered the estate locked down. Security searched every floor, but Martin had left through the north gate before the charity dinner ended. His vehicle was found abandoned near the river. Celeste sat in the library wrapped in a blanket, smoke streaking her face. For the first time, she looked like someone who had discovered that the weapon she carried belonged to another person. Adrian stood across from her. How much did Martin take? I don't know. You moved $6 million through your father's company. He told me the fund was overcapitalized. They knew the difference when their children slept beside broken heaters. Nia placed the surviving transaction receipt on the table. This account received more than housing money. It collected payroll deductions from 14 Vale hotels. Adrian looked at the routing number. It is not Rowan Residential. No. It belongs to a private trust called Meridian 8. Marcus entered with a laptop recovered from Martin's office. Meridian 8 owns shell companies in Nevada, Delaware, and the Cayman Islands. Total transfers exceed $83 million. For how long? Adrian asked. 7 years. Celeste looked up. That began before I met Adrian. Nia nodded. Martin used you to expand a scheme that already existed. Adrian opened the laptop. A file contained photographs of Nia meeting Mrs. Alvarez and former hotel employees. He knew I was coming, Nia said. Marcus found another folder labeled Succession. Inside were draft board resolutions removing Adrian after a manufactured scandal. Martin planned to blame the stolen funds on Adrian, present Celeste as a cooperating witness, and force an emergency sale of the hotel group. Celeste stared at the documents. He told me I would control the company after the wedding. He planned to send you to prison, Nia said. The final page contained a confession written in Celeste's name, admitting she had created every shell company alone. Adrian looked at her. You abused my employees and helped steal from them. Martin did not force you. I know. But he chose you because he knew you would enjoy being feared. Celeste's eyes filled, but Adrian did not soften. Nia examined the confession. It was edited tonight at 8:42. Martin had realized Nia was exposing Celeste and prepared to sacrifice her immediately. A notification appeared. Meridian transfer complete. $83 million had moved out of the trust. A second notification followed. Vale Foundation account, negative balance. The housing fund? Adrian asked. Empty, Marcus said. Nia scanned the transaction details. The money had not gone offshore. It had been divided into hundreds of payments scheduled to reach employee bank accounts by morning. Celeste frowned. Why would Martin return it? He didn't. Nia opened the recipient list. The first names belonged to employees who had agreed to testify. Beside each payment was a legal memo describing it as stolen hush money authorized by Adrian Vale. Martin was planting evidence that made every victim look like a participant. Phones began ringing throughout the mansion. News alerts reported that federal investigators had opened a fraud inquiry into Vale Hospitality. Anonymous documents accused Adrian of stealing from workers and bribing them to remain silent. How did they get here so quickly? Adrian asked. Because Martin scheduled the story before dinner, Nia replied. Celeste stood. He keeps original authorization records. Where? Marcus asked. In a private counting suite above the old flagship hotel. Every transfer requires a physical audit strip from the hotel's original cash counting machine, Celeste said. Martin kept them because digital records can be changed. Those strips can prove who authorized the theft, Nia said. Celeste nodded. But the suite opens only during the building's midnight systems reset. Marcus checked the clock. 11:36 p.m. They had 24 minutes. Adrian ordered 2 vehicles prepared. Before they could leave, Nia's phone received a video call. Martin appeared inside the counting suite, holding a silver canister over a tray filled with audit strips. Come quickly, he said. At midnight, every original record burns. Behind him, bound to a chair, sat Mrs. Alvarez's daughter. Martin smiled at Nia. You may save the evidence, or save the witness. I am curious which choice your billionaire makes when justice becomes expensive. At 11:41 p.m., 2 black SUVs tore through the gates of Vale House. Adrian rode in the first with Nia and Marcus. Celeste sat in the second under guard, staring at the city lights as if every glowing tower belonged to a life she had already lost. Martin's video remained open on Nia's phone. Mrs. Alvarez's daughter, Sophia, was tied to a chair inside the counting suite above the old Vale Grand Hotel. Behind her, Martin stood beside a tray filled with the original audit strips that could prove who authorized 7 years of stolen transfers. A clock on the wall read 11:44. 16 minutes remained. Police are surrounding the hotel, Marcus said. But Martin locked the upper floors and disabled the elevators. He designed the security upgrade, Adrian replied. He knows every response route. Nia looked at the 40-story hotel ahead. I worked there before Brighton. The building has a mechanical service lift behind the linen warehouse. Does it reach the counting floor? Marcus asked. It reaches 38. The suite is on 40. Then we climb. Adrian looked at Sophia struggling against the ropes. We save her first. Nia turned toward him. And the evidence? If Martin burns it, we find another way. I will not trade a woman's life for my company. For years, his employees believed Vale money mattered more than they did. Tonight, Adrian finally understood that justice meant nothing if it required sacrificing the person closest to the fire. The vehicles stopped behind the hotel. Nia led them through the loading dock and into the linen warehouse. The mechanical lift was hidden behind stacked banquet chairs. Marcus forced the gate open while Adrian pulled the manual lever. The lift groaned upward. At 11:51, they reached the 38th floor. The hallway lights were dead. Sprinkler alarms flashed without sound. Martin had isolated the building so no warning would reach guests below. Celeste arrived with the second team and stepped out of the stairwell. You were told to remain downstairs, Adrian said. I know how Martin thinks. You also helped him. That is why I know what he will do. Nia studied her. Celeste had spent months frightening people who could not fight back. Nothing erased that. But fear had changed direction, and for once she was walking toward it. They climbed the final 2 floors. The counting suite door was reinforced steel. A keypad displayed a 60-second lockout after every failed code. Celeste entered 6 digits. The panel turned red. "Wrong," Marcus said. He changed it. Inside, Martin's voice came through the door. 50 seconds until midnight. Sophia screamed. Adrian struck the steel. "Open it." Martin laughed. Nia examined the keypad. Tiny smears crossed the numbers. Martin had wiped the surface, but one key remained clean. The 0. "He used a code without 0, she said. "That leaves too many combinations," Marcus replied. Nia looked at the date stamped on the first payroll receipt she preserved 4 years earlier. Martin had framed her on October 17th. Try 101704. Celeste entered it. Green light. The door opened at 11:59. Martin stood across the room with a lighter in one hand and a pistol in the other. The audit strips lay beneath a clear cover connected to the silver canister. Sophia sat near the windows, her chair wired to a floor switch. "Take another step," Martin said, "and the chair releases." Adrian stopped. "What does it release?" "The window lock." 40 floors below, police lights crowded the street. Martin had turned Sophia into a counterweight. If anyone crossed the pressure line in the carpet, her chair would roll backward through the opening panel. Nia saw the seam beneath the chair. He had designed the choice to look simple, evidence on one side, a life on the other. But Martin always depended on people accepting the choices he created. Nia refused. "Celeste," she said quietly, "when you entered this suite, where did he make you stand?" Celeste pointed toward a brass circle beside the wall. "There." "Why?" "He said it was safest during the system's reset." Nia understood. The brass circle was the manual balance control for the counting floor, installed when the hotel used heavy cash carts. If pressed, it locked every rolling platform in the room. "Step on it," Nia said. Martin raised the pistol. "Do not move." Celeste looked at Adrian. Then she stepped onto the brass plate. A mechanical bolt slammed beneath Sophia's chair. Martin fired. The bullet struck the wall beside Celeste, but she did not move. Marcus and 2 officers rushed forward. Martin threw the lighter onto the tray. Adrian lunged toward Sophia while Nia grabbed a fire blanket and covered the burning strips. The silver canister released accelerant, but the blanket trapped most of the flames. Marcus tackled Martin against the counting table. The pistol slid across the floor. The clock changed to 12 o'clock. The building reset. The locked windows sealed. Emergency lighting returned. The suite's mechanical printer came alive and began feeding a fresh audit report from inside the wall. Martin stared in horror. Nia pulled the page free. The report listed every manual override made during the previous 7 years. Beside hundreds of stolen transfers appeared the same authorization code. M-Gauge 01. The counting machine had preserved its own history. Martin had tried to burn the paper copies without knowing the original system generated a permanent reset record at midnight. "You lost," Nia said. He laughed breathlessly beneath Marcus's knee. "No. Vale is already ruined. The government believes Adrian bribed the staff. The company will collapse before morning." Sophia was freed and placed in her mother's arms when Mrs. Alvarez arrived with police. Adrian looked through the surviving records. Not if the truth reaches them first. By 12:20, federal investigators occupied the suite. Nia gave them the original payroll receipt, reset report, Martin's succession files, and ledger pages photographed before the cellar fire. Celeste surrendered access to Rowan Residential Services and signed a statement explaining how Martin taught her to collect employee information, create false reports, and divert housing money. She did not ask for immunity. "I knew people were afraid," she told investigators. "I wanted them to be." Adrian heard every word. When Celeste finished, she approached him without the confidence she had worn in the ballroom. "I did not know Martin planned to kill Sophia. That does not excuse what you did know. I understand. You kept passports. You threatened families. You stole from people whose names you never learned." Celeste lowered her eyes. "Will you tell them I helped tonight?" "I will tell the truth." All of it. She nodded once. It was not forgiveness, and she did not deserve to mistake it for forgiveness. Martin Gage was arrested for fraud, kidnapping, attempted murder, evidence destruction, extortion, and conspiracy. His offshore accounts were frozen before sunrise. Investigators recovered enough money to restore the housing fund and repay every stolen payroll deduction with interest. Celeste was arrested as well. Her cooperation prevented Martin from blaming innocent staff members. She later pleaded guilty to fraud, coercion, unlawful possession of identification documents, and conspiracy. Her father's company was dissolved, and every property it controlled was transferred to an independent employee housing trust. The next morning, Adrian stood before cameras in the Vale Grand Ballroom. He did not hide behind attorneys. He admitted that his distance allowed fear to grow inside his company. He announced an external investigation, suspended executives who ignored complaints, and surrendered personal control over the worker housing fund. Then he invited Nia to the microphone. Reporters expected a grateful Maid thanking the billionaire who had finally listened. Nia gave them something else. For years, employees were told silence was professionalism, she said. It was not. Silence protected the people stealing from them. No company should depend on one powerful person deciding whether frightened workers deserve to be believed. Behind her stood Mrs. Alvarez, Mr. Hale, the driver, the florist, and dozens of hotel employees. Nia displayed the copied records proving Martin framed her 4 years earlier. Adrian publicly cleared her name. I failed to investigate her warning, he said. That failure cost employees 7 years of wages and safety. He offered Nia the position of Chief Ethics Officer for Vale Hospitality. She refused it in front of everyone. A murmur moved through the room. I will not become another executive whose authority depends on your approval, she said. Adrian accepted the answer. What would you accept? An independent worker protection office, funded by the company but governed by elected employees. Full access to payroll, housing, complaints, and security records. No executive can dismiss its investigators. Adrian looked at the employees behind her. Done. Nia became the office's first director only after the staff elected her. Over the following months, every stolen dollar was returned. Unsafe housing was repaired or replaced. Passports and documents were restored. Employees forced to resign were offered their jobs back with compensation, though many chose not to return. Mrs. Alvarez used her settlement to open a bakery with Sophia. Mr. Hale retired with the pension Celeste had threatened to destroy. Adrian changed too. He stopped treating smooth reports as proof that everything was fine. Once each month, he met workers without managers present and listened without interrupting. He never asked Nia to trust him simply because he was trying. He understood trust had to be earned where the damage happened. 6 months later, Vale House hosted another charity dinner. There was no silver bell on the table. No stolen passports. No blank resignation forms. Nia entered the ballroom wearing a dark blue suit, not a maid's uniform. The same guests who watched Celeste accuse her now rose as she announced the first employee-controlled housing project. Adrian stood to one side and applauded. Mrs. Alvarez approached Nia afterward. Do you remember your first morning? She asked. Everyone was terrified of Celeste. Nia smiled. Fear survives only while everyone believes they are standing alone. Across the ballroom, hundreds of employees stood together. Celeste had once ruled the mansion because nobody dared challenge her. Then the new black maid exposed her before everyone, and proved the most powerful person in the room was not the billionaire, the fiancé, or the executive controlling the money. It was the woman who refused to let fear decide what the truth was worth.